All right, this will be the continuation of key issue 2 for language, and we'll continue on with key issue 3. Content objective. Explain the origins and the diffusion of the Indo-European language family. Your I-CAN statements. Describe the origin and diffusion of English. 2. Describe the two theories of the origin and diffusion of the Indo-European language family. And lastly, explain how the modern English language diffuses worldwide. Here we have again a quick review of the Indo-European language family tree. Make sure you can understand each of the definitions of language family, branch, language group, and languages. And then tell me how a language evolves from a language family. Well, in starting, the Roman Empire in the 2nd century, so the 100 Common Era, created a Roman Empire that had expanded all the way around the Mediterranean Sea, as you can see in the visual up above, with the spreading of the Roman Empire. And as the Roman Empire spread with army conquest, they spread the language Vulgar Latin all around the Mediterranean Sea. This would be early contributions to the English language. Other contributors would be the Celtic tribes. About 2000 before Common Era, they donated, or they created a few words that are used today, such as flannel or basket. Then we have the Germanic tribes of the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes that arrive in 450 before Common Era. And they comprise nearly a quarter of all modern English words today. The Anglo-Saxons and Jutes, keep in mind, they contributed to the modern English. The three tribes who brought the beginnings of English to the British Isles shared a language similar to that of other people in the region from which they came. Today, English people and others who trace their cultural heritage back to England are often called Anglo-Saxons, after the two largest tribes. So the least contributing tribe of those three would have been the Jutes. Modern English has evolved primarily from 3 Germanic tribes, some forms of Vulgar Latin, as well as some Celtic languages as well. And then it continues to evolve over the invasions of the Normans in England, or first the Vikings. With the Viking invasions, the Vikings brought with them language contributions to the English language. And those, again, you won't have to know this for the test, but some of the words they brought were simple words that relate to ravaging and pillaging, such as die. And the Normans contributed through their English invasions in about the 1000 Common Era. They spoke French, which was the official language for 300 years in England, until the Statute of Plebeian in 1362, which changed the official language of courts and business to English. But after 300 years, French, we can see the impact of Latin with the branch of, with the Romance branch in the individual language of French impacting English. All right, so here's some more words contributed by the Vikings. And then more than half of our words today are found in Latin roots. So we see the impact that French had as well as the Romans. Here shows the invasion and migratory routes of all of the Celts, the Germans, the Germanic tribes, the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes, the Normans and the Vikings. English diffused around the world because of English colonies, so English colonization. Former colonies would adopt the language as their official language. And then one of their largest colonies, North America, they brought the language to Jamestown in 1607. As it became the standard language in colonies, there were different colonial groups in the different regions of colonial America, and with that formed different regional dialects. And also with the defeat of France by England, England became, in the French-Indian War, when the French were beat by the English became the dominant language in North America. And then when the United States gains is an independent country, and um, in their period of history where they were colonizing and imperializing, they diffused the language to the Philippines. Here's a graph that shows you how much of the English language is rooted in Latin. There's a quarter of our languages that were contributed by the Germanic groups of Anglo-Saxons and Jutes. The Indo-European is the branches of Germanic, Romance, Balto-Slavic, and Indo-Iranian. Their ancestral language is the Proto-Indo-European language family. There are linguists and anthropologists that suggest two theories or theses as to how the Proto-Indo-European language family diffused so widely. The first is nomadic warrior theory, or nomadic warrior hypothesis, and the second is the Renfro's sedentary farmer hypothesis. Here we have the Kurgan nomadic warrior theory. The Kurgan nomadic warrior theory shows faster diffusion through army or military conquests as it spread from Central Europe to eastern parts of Europe. Here we have the sedentary farmer theory by Renfro, and it shows that it diffuses much slower, but this diffusion went both east and west, and as it diffused, it sought more agricultural land, and with more agricultural land, there was more agricultural innovation. When looking at the distribution of language families, we can see the dark colors is countries where the dominant language is from the same language family. This map shows the Indo-European language family, diffused from its hearth in the Caucasus Mountains. That would be this region right here, Caucasus Mountains, and spread throughout Eurasia and through contagious diffusion into the Americas and parts of Africa. Later that was colonized, and Australia through colonization, a penal colony. Again, that was brought through contagious diffusion and relocation diffusion. All right, here's a quick review. Just go ahead and take a look at the questions and make sure you understand comprehensive answers to each of them. The second part of notes is going to be content objective. Explain how individual languages vary among places. This would be key issue 3. First, I can explain how official languages and working languages diffuse to shape the global language cultural landscape. 2. Describe the main dialects in the United States. 3. Explain the main ways that British and U.S. English dialects vary. And lastly, explain why it's sometimes difficult to distinguish between a language and a dialect. Key terms: official language. It is used by government officials. It is used within conducting business. It's used in signage. It's used in money. A working language is primarily used in international organizations such as corporations, multinational corporations. It's primarily used for correspondence or conversation. When we look at the United Nations, it has 6 official languages, noted right here. The official EU languages are written in black. And we can see that the official languages come from various branches and also various language families. English is the official language, and now it's 57 countries. We can see the distribution. Again, much of that is distributed by colonialism, mostly British and then later American. All right, watch this video. It's pretty funny. All right, dialects. They're regional variations. How do we know a dialect? Well, they have distinctive vocabulary, spelling, and pronunciation. But the one thing about a dialect is of a language that has a dialect, they will have a similar alphabet. Boundaries within regional words that are used are called isoglosses. They're somewhat vernacular regions because they're hard to delineate. it's hard to separate one dialect from another. It's not like you walk across an invisible line and you hear another dialect. So that's called a isogloss. A large number of speakers are widely distributed with a large number of English dialects. Here's an example of an isogloss with the word caramel or caramel. We can see 2 syllables or 3 syllables, but oftentimes there's not a delineated line. It will again bleed into other area or other colors. All right, the dialects in the United States. Well, how did the United States develop a different dialect than Great Britain? Because of isolation. And when they became isolated, they formed 3 different dialects, one in New England and the other in Southeastern, which were more diversity of social classes and backgrounds that came from Southeastern England. And then the Midlands is the most diverse group because they brought immigrants from several countries to states like Pennsylvania. You can see how they differentiate with their dialects in each of the 3 colonial regions. Some words are specific to a dialect, but they relate to life, food, and objects of daily activities. They're greatest in the language differences are greatest in rural areas because of limited interaction. Urban areas, less dialect difference because of the impact of mass media. Here we have another, we can see an isogloss in regional dialects of the United States when it comes to the reference to soft drink. We can see that in the north we tend to call it pop, whereas in the south they tend to call it Coke. And then soda on our coasts. Here shows you the 3 regions and the 3 main dialects that came with colonial America. Here are the U.S. dialects that's noted in your book today. So 4 main dialects in the U.S. Here we're looking at a sign on the right. It displays at a march in Miami, Florida, in Haitian Creole. So again, we see the use of different languages. Well, the use of a Creole language, which we'll talk about here shortly. All right, as review. Continuing on here, the United Kingdom has a British dialect, and they have a standard or institutional language. The standard institutional language is for government, business, education, and mass communication. The English government guidance is through the British Received Pronunciation, known as the BRP. Again, the British Received Pronunciation will reassure that the dialect is spelled and pronunciated properly. We look at regional dialects with early settlers into the British Isles. When we look at British and American English dialects, they're different in vocabulary simply because of isolationism, and also America's landscape is much different than England. So they had different encounters, and their climate is different. And then Noah Webster is going to be the person that creates the distinct American English dialect dictionary. And that will create American patriotic support. And also in that you will see a change in spellings that will not match the Oxford Dictionary found in British English. And then pronunciation limits the interaction because of isolationism. Dialects are language. They become increasingly difficult to determine whether it's 2 languages or just different dialects. Several languages in Italy, for instance, have been traditionally classified as dialects of Italy, but up until recently, now ethnographers believe, or in linguistic studiers, believe that they're distinct languages enough, such as Emiliano Romagnola and Lombard, and Sicilian. We look at other Romance languages such as Catalan, Valencia, and Galicia. And Catalan is a distinct language. Valencia is currently a dialect, but its speakers clamor to have an individual language recognized. And Galician is many of the speakers would prefer to consider it a dialect of Portuguese. It's one of the world's most widely used languages. Here we look at Catalonia and with a protest. Again, Catalans fighting for an independent language instead of a dialect of Spanish. All right, when we look at car and driving related terms and with dialect difference between England and the United States, we can see it with how they list a for sale car. Go on this website and see if you can, or go through the battery of questions asked to determine what dialect you most likely have amongst the various dialects in the U.S. All right, and we'll stop there today.